Hi folks, Fon here. I'm now in Tunisia. It's near the end of May. It's starting to get very hot, but the building and the projects must go on. What I'm going to try to do is build a radio controlled plane from scratch. Obviously it's not my first time, but I'm hoping to document the whole process. So I've got my carbon fibre rods ready, 6mm by 1m. I've got some wings which I cut out in Athens before I left for Tunis. Two 50cm by 20cm, and these are cut from the green foam insulation boards, which are 2 centimetres thick. All I'll be using is foam and this other foam board, which is, I think that's 5mm thick. So that's all I'll be using. I've got some materials ready from over the years of buying stuff. An undercarriage, and I haven't decided whether to use this or this for the tail wheel. And just finally, what I'm going to be using as my kind of template is this plane. It's a nice plane, it works, but it's a bit scrappy. I want to do better, and I'll video the whole process. If you've seen the town before, you know Joy. She's my little companion today. So I'm designing as I go. I'll tackle obstacles as I come upon them, and nothing to do with flying cars or flying boats, nothing fancy, just build a flying plane. And voila. And I decided upon, I like to build around the C of G, centre of gravity point of the craft. So I've decided to put the C of G, which is a little bit more forwards than this, and put it at 33 centimetres or 1/3 of the distance back from the very, very tip of the nose. So I've got the C of G point here. And I've done the trick of getting a pencil and a ruler and drawing a very hard line, so I'm going to fold these in a minute. That's going to assist me to fold. That's where the front of the wing will be, 20cm wing. That's where the back of it will be, and that's where my folds will be to give a narrower front and a narrower back. So here we are a few minutes later. Two of them, and I'm just about, I got a ruler and I inscribed or scored deeply there so that I can go something like that. And I've made a third piece to be the bottom, and I'm about to glue this piece on here like that, and that piece like that. Et voila. Okay, using the trusty hot glue, we now have this. The story so far. This is all still on the first afternoon. I'm going to use the heat gun now to heat this front part, top and bottom, and gently curve it up there. Hot glue it into place. Hi again, day 2. Very pleased with what I got done yesterday. So moving on, I've already got wheels ready. They're going to go something like that. Here are wheels which I had pre-cut from Athens. And I have these little 3D printed inserts from another project, so I'm going to glue these in like that and assemble the wing. Here we are, 15 minutes later. There are the inserts, hot glued in. The carbon fibre rod is glued in. It's not an amazing wing, it's not the lightest wing, but it should be perfectly functional. I'll just need to cut ailerons and insert slots for servos and iron-on covering, and that should do the job. So next up I decided to work on the undercarriage. I hate waste, so this is an old piece of plywood which I'm going to fill those 2 holes there. I'm going to drill new holes. And note, look, if this is the C of G here, you want your wheels absolutely quite a bit forward. Very pleased with this. Undercarriage is installed. I could have used longer nuts and bolts and just, used nuts and bolts, but I used the blind nuts. Very pleased with that. Or I could have not bothered to reinforce inside, but, obviously it's better to do a good job. Now, I'm going to cut this. I don't want it that high the wing. I'm going to draw around that, put it at a 2 to 3 degree angle, and make a cutout for that to be sunk down. Then I'm going to use the good old-fashioned, very simple method. It's going to be rubber band attachment with dowels through here. Now, where the dowels go through, there are at least 4 methods. I could be cheap and cheerful and just use metal washers, but that's a bit heavy. I could use a little bit of plywood. I could use thick plastic, like on, this is cut off a thick file folder. Or I could go the fancy route and 3D print myself a circular washer. So with the day that's in it, I'm going to go the fancy route. That noise you hear in the background is, I'm going to print myself a nice washer. So I've done a cutout for this wing, which will be on a 3 degree angle upwards from horizontal, bottom of the wing. I've put some reinforcement there for the bands. Here are my dowels, 3D printed pieces. Here we go, at the start of day 3, I've got some reinforcing formers. Each of them has a hole cut into the middle, and they're going to go through, they're going to go into the body, and they're marked and shaped to fit nicely. And then, not right now, but later I'm going to glue this carbon rod into the middle, like that, reinforcement. So, the rod fits through nicely. I'm not gluing it in yet because I want to be able to move stuff around. That moves, but they're all glued in. If I'd have thought on in advance, I should have cut the holes through here for the wires to go through and the servo rods, but I'll have to do that in situ. Pity I didn't think in advance. Also, I have selected a motor 1800 kV with a 7-inch prop, an old speed controller of mine, 30 amp, and 4 servos. Next up, I've prepped a little piece of foam shaped like that to fit into the nose here. And then I'm going to fit a piece of plywood over the top for the motor. Next up, I have a piece of plywood cut for the motor mount and roughly sanded to shape. I've roughened the inside so the glue will stick, and I've marked top and bottom. And just one little tip, a friend of mine, Paddy Cummins, many years ago when he was showing me how to fly, he told me that a motor should have a little bit of right thrust and down thrust. Now the reason for that is because of the direction that motors turn, it makes, because of the torque and counteracting the torque, it makes the airplane want to go to the left. So a little bit of right thrust counteracts the torque, or the spin. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Also, the down thrust is because as you accelerate, the plane's more likely, or throttle up, the plane is more likely to go nose up. So if you have down thrust, even as you're accelerating or throttling up, it counteracts that tendency to go nose up. So hence the bit of down thrust and a bit of right thrust. So the good news is the motor is installed. The bad news is that this hole here for the wires was too small for them to fit through with their insulation on their heat shrink. So I had to take all the heat shrink off and redo that. But there we go. Pretty pleased with that. Hi again, welcome. Day 4 of the plane build. I've prepared a small piece of plywood with a shape like that. And that's going to go, it's going to become a battery tray, and it's going to fit in something like that. And around those little notches at the edge, I'm going to use this roll of Velcro and glue it in. I think that went fairly well. The Velcro straps will go over the top of the battery, like that. And I'm also going to get a little piece of this sponge, cut it, and put it there to insulate or protect the battery. Here's a switch glued in, and the sponge protector. Next up we have a commercially available tail wheel. No, I didn't attempt to build one of these, though I have done in the past. And it's going to go on the back bottom like this. And I am sometimes guilty of over-engineering, so I'm just going to show you what I've done. I put in a piece of plywood here with some blind nuts, and this type of plastic sheet is available on the back of any standard kids folder, but it's very useful and it makes stuff very strong if you cut it and not glue it on. And finally, let me just show you the blind nuts. Here we are, the blind nuts. So they go on from the inside and your bolt goes in from that side. Like I said before about the front of the plane, I'm just going to have to hope and pray that the back of it doesn't break, because it would be very difficult to get in and repair it. But that's kind of why I used blind nuts. If this breaks, I can just put nuts and bolts to replace that. Okay, so the tail wheel is installed and ready to rock. Next up, I'm going to take the wing and I'm going to cut out ailerons. And then I'm going to put some slots or whatever you call them for the servos to fit into. Okay, I confess that's a bit scary, taking a nicely made wing and cutting it to pieces, but you have to, it has to be done. The next job I'm going to do is, if that's just flat to that, it can't move. So if you check out this angle, it's not quite 45 degrees, it's less. So at the back of that, I just cut that by hand. Now, when I put that back where it came from, now it can go downwards. But without that cut, it can't do that. I used a small craft knife, and I cut holes in the wing of the servos. I had these 3D printed pieces which I've done at another point, kind of servo mounts. They're going to go in something like that. However, I'm not installing them yet, because if I install them now and do the iron-on covering afterwards, it's very difficult to go around them neatly, so I'll put this on first and install these later. So let's jump in and do a little bit of iron-on covering. Check out either my vid about how to do this, or lots of other vids by aeromodelers better than me about how to do iron-on covering. But for now, I'm just going to jump in and give this a go. I'm a bit rusty. Let's see. Not perfect, but not too bad. Welcome to day 5. Last night I finished off with covered these ailerons with black iron-on covering, and right now I'm just about to launch into some red iron-on covering. to cover this wing. So here I am 1 hour later. I'm pretty damn pleased with that. And after I've used the iron, I used the heat gun to pull it all tight. Well, to the best of my abilities, pretty pleased with it. Okay, here we are, day 6. It's not a 5-minute job to build an RC plane, it really takes time and dedication. So, day 6, I am working on the ailerons. I've just put in the control horns there. The rudder horns look something like that, and you glue that bit in. If it was a thin aileron, you could put that on the other side, but it wasn't thin enough, so just that glued in to make that. I'm using a lovely new glue that I found. It's a super glue with an activator. That's it there. I'm not being paid anything, but it's foam safe. It's foam safe, and you can use an accelerator. I absolutely love it. It's my favourite new glue. I just want to show you how I'm putting in these hinges, right? I've got one more to do here. So I did centre, and like 4 centimetres from the end, and well away from the control horn. So, watch this. There's the kind of not quite 45-degree angle. I don't know, it's 30-degree or something, that angle. And the reason is, if it was totally flat, it couldn't bend, but because there's an angle, it can bend down like that. So that's the reason we put that angle, and of course it can come up easily. But here's the other thing I wanted to show you. If I put these hinges in, little plastic hinges, if I just put them in kind of straight like that, there's no meat, so you have to put them in at an angle like that, into the fattest part. And the same over here, you can't just go in like straight, you've got to go in at an angle and get as much kind of meat as possible. So I'm going to do this one here. I'm going to very, very carefully and slowly take this scalpel, and I'm going to go in at an angle, being very, very careful not to cut myself. Do you see the angle I'm doing there? And then I'm going to use my super glue and my activator and do the same on there. And that should be it. Voila! Very pleased with that. Now I just need to get my clevises and push rods and attach them like that. And then the wing will be done. Incidentally, there are many ways of connecting your control arms and your servo arms. What you usually have to do is get a 2mm drill bit and drill out the relevant hole a bit. So next up, I've made a servo tray out of some plywood. The servos, 2 servos are going to go in, something like that. The leads are going to come out there, and that's going to be glued in to here. That servo tray, something like that. There you go, day 7. So, I've done a couple of jobs. I've installed temporarily most of the electrics. The speed controller is hiding under there. I've also put in a ventilation hole here to cool off the speed controller. And I've put a little hole in there and put a little hole in here. I'll probably put one there as well to let the air go through. Next up, what I'm going to do is, and yeah, of course, I think I showed you this last time, this wing is finished. Quickly glued them on to locate the wing in its proper position. So, very happy with all that. And that is going to have, here are 2 little magnets. One of them is going to be put in there. I'm going to glue it and tape it. And it's going to go like that. So I've got a piece of foam board and I'm about to heat gun it so that it'll fit here. And I'm going to take a piece of this artist lollipop stick, glue that on there, and I'm going to take the other magnet and glue and tape it in there. Well, I won't show you all the little mistakes that I made. I managed to fix them all, and I ended up with this. Aligning strips, lollipop for the front, magnet glued and taped in. It's rather nice. And that nice little bit. Using the previous model as a rough blueprint, I've made this tail plane 40 centimetres, 13 centimetres, 8 centimetres. It looked right on the previous plane, and on a good day it flies well. For safety, I'm going to put a slot in the bottom of that and insert that. So, cut the vertical and horizontal tail fin parts. It's going to go something like this. And this. Welcome to day 8. So, here's the tail piece so far. Rudder, horizontal stabiliser. Top piece there. What I'm going to do though is a design something like this. That's so that the rudder can turn, they cut a deep V in that and have a strong connector between there and there. So inside this V cut is a big thick piece of bamboo skewer like that, which has been embedded into there, super glued in and taped on. So that should be good and strong and give me plenty of room to add hinges and control horns. Next up I have push rods with a Z-bend at one end and a servo arm connector at the other end. Now, they're going to go from here all the way to the body. I put little plywood formers because, let's face it, this foam wood isn't strong enough, so look at the plywood form with 2 holes drilled there, an extra piece put in there, and a friend of mine recently said what he does is he goes from this side across to there, and from that side across to there. Otherwise you're kind of trying to go straight and then coming out, but that way I'm hoping it's going to be more straight across. Finally, look, I did these little pieces here, which I'm about to put there and there underneath the horizontal tail piece. I just want to show you, I drilled them at a rather extreme angle like this. Do you see that? That was difficult. As you can see, they cross there underneath the carbon fibre rod. So that was difficult and mistakes were made, but I got through it. There we go. Day 9. Here are all the pieces for the tail plane. But before I glue them together, I'm going to do some iron-on covering first. If I'm going to be putting stuff like hinges in there, it would be very, very difficult to do the covering afterwards, so I should cover the covering first. Also, what I did was I pinched and sanded these just to a slight point. So, to do these, took me way more than an hour, but it does take time if you're going to do it well. So I'm going to glue this in and attach the control horns and the hinges next. Good morning, day 9. With the help of this, I've prepared this. I'm about to glue that on there. Then I'll get my hinges and control surfaces and put this on here and that on there like that. So here we have the 4 hinges on this side are all glued in securely, and I cleaned the hinges with tissue after I put them in. I've now got them just into the start of their pre-cut slots. I'm going to apply a dab of super glue to each, then wiggle the whole lot in and again clean the hinges with. So, hours later, I'm probably going to celebrate in a minute by gluing this top on, but for now you can still see how it's all operating. Once I glue this top on, all of there becomes inaccessible. I toyed with the idea of building in hatches for repairs and maintenance, but I think instead, if there's ever a problem when I'm repairing, I'll make hatches. Even my other previous plane, I've never had any trouble at all with the push rods, ever. So I'm just going to hope there's never a problem. If there is, I'll cut hatches to get access. But I think in a little while, a few minutes, I'm going to celebrate and simply glue this on. And hope that nothing ever breaks with it. Oh, and finally, full disclosure, I had Z-bends built in here and here on these control rods, but I should have attached them into the control horns before installing them. I didn't, so I had to cut off the Z-bends and use these little domino block style connectors instead. So there we go. Where there's a will, there's a way. So here we are many hours later on day 9. This plane is finished physically, it just needs covering. I had to replace a dodgy rudder servo, and I also discovered that to get the balance point at 25 to 30% back from the front of the wing, I had to add 100 grams to the nose. Next time I will make along the nose. It was 800 grams without the battery, now it's 900 grams. So I guess plus the battery, it'll be 1 kilo. C'est la vie. Next time I'll do along the nose. Here we are, day 10. Finishing touches. I need to put a bit more blue there, finish this off, put a bit more blue there, neaten up here and here. I think there's too much down thrust, so I'm going to loosen off all these screws, put a couple of washers under there. It's taken me 10 days. I don't see how you could go much quicker than that. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm learning from my mistakes. I hope to do better next time. Next time I'm going to put a proper windscreen here and along the nose and a thinner body. It needs to go on a bit of a diet to get slimmed down a bit. Well, goodness me, the end of day 10 and the end of the build. I'm delighted with the look of the plane. If it flies anything like as well as it looks, I'll be delighted. That's the best looking plane I've ever made. Very, very pleased with that. Let's hope it flies as well as it looks. And the 2 dots, the silver and the black, should give very good visibility. Yeah, so delighted with that. Thank you for watching. If you have a go building a radio control plane yourself, very best of luck with it. You'll need it. And don't rush it because it takes at least 10 days. Well, for me anyway, it took at least 10 days, doing 2 or 3 hour days. So, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully we'll have another vid soon, where I get out and fly the blooming thing. All the best, God bless, bye.